So who is to blame? Some people say it's Klaus Schwab's fault. Others blame it all on Jill Bates. Or maybe even more pathetically on the bloody Tories. Maybe the Clintons. Maybe even the Illuminati. The unfortunate truth, however, is that for most of us, we've only got ourselves to blame. And that's because of our own moral deficiencies. And I think for society as a whole, we are where we are because far too many of us have lost sight of morality. We don't know what the difference is between right or wrong. We've allowed ourselves to forget these very, very important issues. We've lost sight of morality, and we no longer understand the difference between right and wrong behaviour. So it might be very tempting to blame what's happened on Klaus, Obama, Tony Blair, Jill Bates, etc. But actually that's to misdiagnose the problem. The problem isn't them, the problem is us. We allowed what happened to happen, and it happened because of our own moral deficiencies, en masse, in aggregate. So recently I've been watching quite a few videos on the issue of natural law, and basically from what I've learned, bad things happen when human beings fail to uphold basic morality towards their fellow men. And that's basically the situation that we've got into now, is that bad things have happened because we've forgotten about morality, we've ignored it. And you know, essentially the more immoral we are, the less freedom we have, and also the more tyranny we'll experience. So in conclusion then, what you could say is that our immoral actions have consequences. I could see the beginnings of this moral decline when I was a teacher, and students would often wrongly claim that just because something was legal, it must therefore be moral. So you could do, well, you know, obviously this, if you think about what happened in the 1930s, all of the crimes that against humanity that actually occurred, those were all legal at the time because the German government made sure that it passed laws before it committed its acts of inhumanity. So whatever they did was legal, but it certainly wasn't moral. So that's the kind of first misconception that we need to kind of address as society, is just because something's legal doesn't make it moral. In fact, by obeying the law, you might be committing a crime against humanity. In another way, just because you're obeying the law, that doesn't mean that your behaviour is moral. Another issue is that people have been prioritising their own comfort and a nice material standard of living over morality for way too long. You know, in essence, bad things have been happening because not enough of us have been prepared to give up material comfort in order to pursue moral action. So very sadly then, we find ourselves in the situation we're in because far too many people have done immoral things in return for money, status, ego reasons, and they've complied with evil. They've prioritised material comfort over morality. And you know, what we have to understand here is that we've made a conscious decision to support evil, rather than going with what's moral and at least not harming fellow human beings. You know, and this could be as complying with you know, wearing your underpants on your head, or maybe today it could be a head teacher who's imposing the alphabet agenda on young people, because they know that if they don't do that, they're going to lose their jobs. So they just go along with it. So, you know, if you watch these auditing videos on YouTube, you can see policemen doing the same thing. They're doing things that they know is wrong, but they're doing it in return for the money that they're getting. And maybe if they toe the line really well and arrest Christians maybe for reading the Bible, that might get them a promotion in the police force that's now become political. So if you think about people like Klaus, Gates, etc., these people, they're not physically strong people. You know, they in fact, they're the opposite of that. They're kind of feeble. one blow. These dandelions here, if you were to blow them, they would blow over about as easily as Jill Bates would blow over. So what we have to do here is kind of get real. These people, they set up incentives for us in society to do their bidding, and the incentives are normally focused around money. They manipulate our behaviour by offering us financial carrots, plus a little bit of ego and a bit of status thrown in, and then we do their evil work for them. It's not Obama or Blair who actually they don't pull the finger of the gun. They don't do any of that. They get you guys to do it, and they bribe you into doing it. They get you to sell your own soul. They get you to sell out your own morality and do things that you know are wrong in exchange for money and status. And this is the problem, you see, that there's not been enough of us who are prepared to say no to their bribes. So the system ends up getting what the system wants. So many of you'll know that before I started doing this, I used to be a teacher, and I actually quit rather than going along with this immorality. But I'm actually not going to talk about that. What I'm going to talk about is something that I did teach that was useful. And this was mostly in the A-level business course, which was the issue of short versus long-termism. And I think many people have proven themselves to be ridiculously short-termist, in that if they're offered enough money to do something, like, I don't know, check that shops are displaying the right COVID signage, or take part in a Britney Spears and the Boosters, organising it all, never mind putting the needles into people's whatchamacallits, then what these people have done is that they've prioritised money and all short-term material pleasures derived from spending that money over the long term, which is their own soul. And they fail to understand that there'll be comebacks as a result of their decision to sell out their own morality. And then it's not just on a kind of a micro level, there's also macro impacts. So if lots of people end up being short-termist in this way, society as a whole suffers from the problems that we've got now. So the solution to our problems isn't external. It doesn't lie with things like adopting Bitcoin or a new form of government like direct democracy. The solution isn't external. Rather, the solution is internal. It lies within us. What we have to do is to relearn the importance of behaving in a moral way. So the solution then, to flesh this out, is to say no. So say no to what? Well, say no to their bribes, basically. Say no to selling our souls in exchange for money and status and ego. But I think it's also more than saying no, because saying no just implies inaction, doesn't it? But I think the other aspect too, as well, is that we must start calling out immoral behaviour when we see it. Being silent also makes us complicit, and I've been trying to get across that point in the last few videos. And just to stress that both of those things will involve us having to make a short-term sacrifice. Our own material standards of living will drop. We could end up being locked up, but those are the things that we must do. That represents our only chance to defeat this evil. So I guess another thing that's very important is that we must start teaching young people about morality. Again, certainly in the last school that I worked at, I very much got the impression, the kind of the lessons to be learnt was do whatever you have to do to win. Yeah, let's call it a win at all costs approach. And this again explains to me why we're in such a mess, is that people are prepared to do immoral things in order to achieve their own personal objectives. So as a bare minimum, it's about teaching people to respect other people's human rights. So you don't initiate harm. So you don't go around murdering people. You don't physically assault people either. Even if it means missing out on some money, you still don't do it. Rape, theft and trespass are all incompatible with respecting human rights, as is coercing people into doing something or trying to deceive them in some way to your benefit and to their detriment. So society has to stop doing those things and behaving in a more moral way in order for things to improve. Now I know the murder and whatever sounds a bit extreme, but I think the bigger issues that we've got personally are, like, in particular, deception and coercion. So if you think about the last 3 years, in the case of GPs, they've been involved in murder, or most certainly manslaughter, but I suspect murder because most of them knew exactly. It's inconceivable that they didn't know what they were doing. They also took part in coercion. Many people had the thing that we can't talk about because they were coerced in it, because they had to do it to keep their jobs, or they wanted to do it because they wanted to go on holiday and they couldn't go on holiday without having had it. In Britain, stealing has been a massive problem even well before DIVC 91. So, I think I've told the story before of this guy that I knew who bought bicycle after bicycle, kept on having it stolen. So in the end, he gave up trying to even own a bicycle. During the not so deadly DIVC 91, I remember when I was still working at the school, this would be maybe March 2020, there was a person who, this person would routinely have long time periods away from work because presumably they enjoyed dossing about at home in their PJs over doing what they were employed to do, which was to work in a school. So, that's a form of theft, isn't it? You're basically stealing from your employer. And there's also some deception thrown in there too, because they're claiming to be ill when they weren't ill. You've got other things as well, which would go under the category of theft, which might be, you're in a shop and the shopkeeper gives you more change back than what you should have, and rather than being honest, you decide to steal the money from them and not tell them that they've given you too much back. So that stuff like that has just become endemic. Most people think that it's okay to do that when it's not okay. This is why Britain in particular sucks. The quality of life is terrible. This is what I'm trying to get at here, is that immoral actions have consequences. You reap what you sow. If you live in a society where you and other people are behaving immorally towards each other, it's not going to be a very pleasant experience for you. People that believe in natural law, they would call that a karmic consequence. Another example would be this thing I've quoted before off this web forum that I read sometimes, which is, this guy who gives it the big one about how he's against the Soviet Union. And at the same time, he's also kind of disclosed the fact that his son took a lucrative job to go and check on shops that showed the signage of the Soviet Union. So basically this guy, or his son, whoever it was, they chose to take money in order to coerce people into doing things that they otherwise wouldn't do. So that is, according to natural law, immoral. And I believe it as a Christian. I believe that doing that type of thing is completely immoral. And the thing in question there is you're coercing people. You're taking part in coercion. You're also taking, in the case of the deadly DIVC, you're also trying to take part in fear and intimidation, weren't you? And then also you could say you were also party to assault, because people couldn't breathe properly when they were wearing their underpants on the head, and you were part of that coercion that forced people to wear their underpants on their face. And I know I'm kind of like, well, I'm not trying to make light of this at all. I'm trying to do the opposite, actually. But I remember now just seeing elderly people who were obviously struggling to breathe because they had an obstruction in front of their face. Now this person took money and was party to that, which is completely immoral. This person, like, by doing that, they relinquish any right that they have to point the finger at Jill Bates or Klaus or the Clintons or Tony Blair or Chris Whitty or whoever, because all they can do is just speak some words. It was actually you that made those words into an action, into a reality. You are actually to blame. You turn the words into action. Another one that I had massive problems with when I was teaching was the dyslexia scam, which I suppose would go under the heading of deception, in that that people paid money to get an educational psychologist's report that entitled their kid to 25% extra in an exam. So that 25% extra enabled those students who received the extra time to get better results than they otherwise would have got if they hadn't have got the 25% extra time. So you might say, like, where's the deception? The deception is that they failed to disclose the fact that they received extra time and their exam performance was achieved with that benefit. The employer doesn't know. It's a deception. They don't disclose it. They choose willfully to deceive the employer. Another example would be financial advisors or other people who make false claims about a product. Maybe somebody that sells, oh, I don't know, could be anything, double glazing, and they deceive people into buying their product when they otherwise wouldn't do, by being economical with the truth. Now, I saw this as a teacher. Again, it's this attitude of, oh, if it's legal, it's okay, it's morally okay. They kind of equated those two things, you know. If you, I remember actually there was the head teacher of this place. She'd actually laugh and talk about concocting devious plans, and she actually thought that was funny. Again, I'm not suggesting that she did anything illegal. I'm sure she didn't do anything illegal. But the things that she was doing, like advocating, deceiving people, and actually doing it, was most definitely immoral. And again, you know, what I'm trying to get at here is that if enough people turn their back on morality, the end result is a society that resembles hell on earth. So in conclusion then, a few points. The first one, most important one, is that we shouldn't blame Klaus Schwab. It's not the people at the top who are to blame. It's basically the army, millions, the billions of people who turn the words of Klaus Schwab, Jill Bates, Obama, Tony Blair, Boris Johnson, Macron, all the other kind of WEF people, who turn those words into actions. And that, as I say, the main thing that they do to turn those words into actions is to bribe you into immorality. And this kind of situation that we've got ourselves in, there's only one way out of this situation, which is for us to change. We have to reject immorality, and we have to embrace the truth. So we have to realize that you know, just staying within the law isn't good enough. What we need to do is to, you know, obviously not physically harm other people, but not deceive them either, lying to people to get what you want, or being economical with the truth, being cute. This was, you know, I used to live in Surrey, you know, and there was so much of this going on. It was untrue. You couldn't trust anybody. Whereas here in Finland, life is a lot more enjoyable here to live, and that's a karmic consequence, you know, that morality is still very much alive and kicking in here. I know Finns might disagree, you know, because they might be equating it to Finland 30 years ago, but Finland in 2023 is light years ahead of the UK in terms of its morality, and that basically has consequences. It has favourable consequences for the quality of life. So the question to ask then is are you corruptible, or are you incorruptible? Were you one of the people that basically, you know, the carrot was there, you can stay off work, enjoy the sunshine and get 80% of your pay? How many? I know, I take the point that people didn't have a choice whether they were furloughed or not, but you had a choice about whether you wanted to take the money, and you took the money. So you actually went along with something you shouldn't have gone along with there. You were corrupted. You know, did you work in the NHS and basically prioritised your own salary and your pension over the nation's health and our freedoms? Are you a teacher now that's maybe going along with the kind of the child abuse that's taking place in institutionalised child abuse that's taking place inside our school under the kind of the alphabet mafia? So some final words really about what this means to me as a Christian. This I've done my research about natural law, what my feelings about it. The most obvious feeling is, you know, if you look at the kind of list of 7 things that people shouldn't do to abuse other people's human rights, it kind of links pretty well with the 10 Commandments. You know, that you shouldn't murder people, you shouldn't lie to people, you shouldn't deceive people. So that rings a bell. I can buy into that without too much difficulty, because it's entirely compatible with what's in the Bible. Early on, I made the point about are you willing to make a short-term material sacrifice in order to do the right thing? Well, again, you know, that links in with the Bible. You know, Jesus, that's what he was all about. He said, pick up your cross and follow me. He didn't promise an easy ride, but he said, like, you know, the way to eternal life, the way to happiness and a fulfilled life is to make sacrifices. And so far, I have heard of many, many stories where people who have given up their jobs to do the right things and they've rejected the Soviet Union, they actually have found themselves in a better position than they started off. Whereas I think the people that took the knee to the Britney Spears to go on holiday, I don't think it's worked out too well for them. So, you know, whether you want to call that a karmic consequence, it's just something that appears to have happened. Another thing that I, again, have no trouble buying into at all is this, you know, the natural law people will say don't harm others. And yeah, as a Christian, of course, I buy into that. You know, again, it's called the golden rule, which is to do unto others as you would like to be done to yourself. So treat people as you would like to be treated. This makes sense. Don't deceive other people because you wouldn't like to be deceived or lied to. So I know I've said this already and this video's been pretty long, but yeah, Klaus Schwab isn't responsible for what's gone on. Who is responsible? Well, it's the army of low-level enablers who turned Klaus's words into actions. And that happened because they were bribed. They took money and or status in return for selling out the rest of humanity's human rights. And we're only going to get out of the current situation if people rediscover what morality is. Now, again, for me as a Christian, what's happened is that the church has been corrupted. People have been told that they're eating strawberries when in fact that they've been fed Brussels sprouts. That's turned a lot of people away from Christianity prior to March 2020. People saw it was corrupted. So there was a general decline in moral values, and this is where it's all come from. It's not a surprise that what has happened. It's symptomatic of this problem of a decline in morality. People think it's okay to lie, cheat, steal to get what they want, and they're prepared to trade money and material possessions and status in return for their soul. So, as I say, what things can we do? First of all, we've got to make sure that we behave in a moral way, that we don't take the dirty money, and we say no, we don't comply. And then the other thing, as I've been saying, is that we kind of speak out about it as too. And the final thing that I would say is directed at atheists is read the Bible. I don't think you need to go to a Church of England church, because I think most of them are corrupted and you won't even hear the Bible there. But what I would say is just go to the Bible direct yourself and read one of the 4 Gospels. if you've never read the Bible before, then maybe go for a good news version or an international version. I know that will upset the King James Bible people who think that that's the best translation, and it probably is. But the thing is for somebody who's new to it, it needs to be accessible rather than written in oldie worldy English. So yeah, that's all that I want to say. So I hope I haven't missed anything out. And this, I don't know if this is my most important video that I've done. I don't know. It may well be the longest anyway. So God bless from sunny Finland.